Hello again. Today is December 30th, 2024, and it's about 5 or 6 days since I posted the previous video with the headline Why Finland May Not Be Able to Reverse the Negative Trend, the Case for Illusion of Information Adequacy. I'm from Sweden, I can't pronounce everything. So the article was like a merger of the observations I have done as a researcher here in Finland. And I used the study in an attempt to explain the stuff I observe. And what the study came up with was that people who base their decisions on one-sided information, they are usually more confident that they are correct. Okay. And as a consequence, have a hard time admitting they are wrong. Okay. I argued that this is a marker for tribalism. And why do I mention tribalism? Well, because Mark Pagel, during his Guilford talk in 2019, claimed that one marker for Finland is tribalism. Here we go. So, jumping to the next article, which I authored and published on my science blog yesterday, with the label Did Joy Paul Guilford and Cecil Alec Mace Ever Meet? The Case for Historical Framing and LLM. Oh, I just got this revelation yesterday, and maybe it was because of all the discussions I have with people about Finland's history, what is psychology, what is nutrition, is it dangerous to eat meat, is animal fat dangerous, and so on and so on. And what I can observe is viewpoint diversity. So many people have a different viewpoint compared to my viewpoint. In my defense, they call me an expert. So it doesn't mean I know everything, but there's an increased probability that my viewpoint is consistent with the scientific picture, if you like, often referred to as reality. But what do I know? So in this article, I argue that people have a misunderstanding about psychology because of the people they refer to. Okay, so many people think of psychology as something Sigmund Freud cooked up. And the reason they do that is based on something called framing, I think, could be, and some other mental fallacies. So framing was studied in a very famous paper by two very famous psychologists, Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. They simply demonstrated how we can change people's viewpoint by manipulating the description of the scenario. And maybe that's tricky English, but what it means basically if I tell you something, I can actually put scientific ethics aside and twist the story in a way that I want it. And this is what people usually do in politics and in sales. That's my viewpoint. Not equally often in the science community because we have to use references. So where did you get that? And if someone thinks you're wrong, we have a discussion often, not always. So anyway, so in order to understand why Freud is not the founder of psychology, we need to understand what he was doing. And he was, he was a physician by training, and he went into practice in 1876. And because of his interest in how the mind works, he was probably an early psychiatrist, if that profession did exist. So what is then psychology? Well, the cognitive scientist and artificial intelligence researcher Marvin Minsky coined the following sentence. The mind is what the brain does. I mean, smart people can coin terms like that. I can reiterate them. So I use this phrase over and over again. But accordingly, psychology, according to the American Psychological Association, is defined as the study of the mind and behavior. Psychiatry, on the other hand, is defined as the branch of medicine focused on the diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of mental, emotional, and behavioral disorder. That basically means they want to put a pill in your mouth. Psychology doesn't do that. They say that probably malnutrition, you need sunlight, you need social engagement, like to a greater extent. And recent studies have actually show that food, for example, sometimes is better than medicine. Not always. Medicine is important, but sometimes food is better than medicine. Uh, so that implies a discrimination between psychology and psychiatry, and also kind of the brain and the mind, which is very important. But who? But if Freud wasn't like an important person, and I think he wasn't, I think he disrupted everything. Who were? Well, because I studied creativity, which is combinatory thinking, I stumbled upon Elizabeth Ricord, who was a professor. She was born 1788, and in 1840 she she made a statement about combinatory thinking. Um, Alexander Bain, he was a bit younger. He was born 1808. He also made statements about combinatory thinking, and Charles Darwin. We know him for something else, but in 1872 he published a book about human emotion. But I think Ricord and Bain's work may not resonate with modern science completely, because I don't know if they thought of combinatory thinking as a mental tool for thinking about your future. So, and maybe they did, but my point is that in 1935, a guy called Cecil Alec Mace, an industrial psychologist at Cambridge University, conducted the first experimental study about intentional prospective thinking, that's goal setting, and how that affects performance. And Mace he used statistical analysis. And because of that, the study was considered a bit obscured by the administration at Cambridge University. And that's probably why Joy Paul Guilford was assigned to become president of American Psychological Association in 1950, because they wanted someone who was good at statistical analysis and who could promote that. So here we go. But my question was then, did Guilford and Mace ever meet? Because they were contemporary. A part of the answer is, of course, that during the first half of the 20th century, the First and the Second World War was raging, and that changed the scientific map. Many people in the Baltic state, prominent researchers in the Baltic states, Poland and Germany, moved to England and the US. I think also from France. So they could have met. Second part of the answer is actually based on Marvin Minsky's and others' work on artificial intelligence. And a few years ago, after decades of research, a new type of computer applications came about. They were called large language models, the LLMs. It's not AI, it's LLMs. And these models can index information on the internet in a new way and present an answer to you, which is fantastic, of course. So I used one of these, the Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, to ask, did George Paul Guilford and Cecil Alec Mace ever meet? And the answer is no. It's fascinating, isn't it? I know you don't think so, but I think it's fascinating. But the second question is, did they ever refer to each other? It doesn't appear that they did. So these prominent researchers, I mean, Ricord, Bain, Darwin, and later Mace and Guilford, they probably worked in isolation, didn't socialize with many people, but enough then to come up with these great ideas, which we now take for granted. But what's the message? I don't know. Maybe it's about combining the previous video and this one. If you don't believe you know that your viewpoint is correct, if someone else have a different viewpoint, use the viewpoint diversity to come up with a new answer, but use scientific sources to lead you in the proper direction.